Oh, whoops. Hi, Rabbi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I have here that we're up to
One
what
second.
I'm showing on the screen, which I'll show you in a minute.
I don't know why my hair is so messed up. Oh well.
Right.
Uh,
Okay, we're up to Chavod Hashem Kavavos. I believe that's last we learned, August 10th. That makes sense. Yeah. So this is we're in the middle of um a paragraph which we say when we put the Sefer Torah back in the Aron Kodesh, or we say Friday night just before the Chaldoti. Havel Hashem B'nei Elim, and the next part is Havel Hashem Kavod Va'oz. Havel Hashem Kavod Shemo. Give Hakadosh Baruch Hu our honor and power. Give Hakadosh Baruch Hu the honor of His name. Ain't Kavod al Torah. There's no honor except for Torah. Shem Rasim Hashem Kavod. They'll give Hakadosh Baruch Hu Kavod. You see also by email Gidu, and they will tell his praise in the distant islands. V'omer tnu Hashem Elokeinu kavod, and says, give a God, your Lord, honor. So it's not clear how we derive from the pasuk, but he says here in for the bottom, Shem Esim Hashem kavod. The pasuk said lo made. For this pasuk, Hakadosh Baruch Hu chafetz shebnei Yisrael yilimedu Torah. From this passage we learn Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants the Jews to learn Torah. Shini Nikres Kavod, which is called honor. Vazim Tova, and then it'll be good for them. Kamvur Psukim Sham, as is clear from the Psukim there. But Tunu Hashem Elokeinu Kavod v'Gomer, as give God your Lord honor, etc. V'Sova Pasuk. The end of the verse says, "V'tem yachshich," before it goes dark. "V'tem yisnagvu raglechem," and before your legs stumble, "al harei neshef," on dark mountains. "B'kibisim le'or," and you're going to yearn then for light. V'gomer sheb'chisarna Torah na'aseh korban. If there's a lack of Torah, then there's ruination, destruction in the world. But the flip side of that is that what it says here is, "Uvetilaso b'yim yagidu." That this is we reference this actually on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. We say that V'yagidu ba'im tzidkach, that in the distant islands they should tell over the praise of HaKadosh, the righteousness of Hashem. In other words, that there's a paragraph in the davening, in the Ashkenazic davening. They will come to worship you, all the non-Jews of the world. They'll all come to worship you and recognize your greatness. And this is a great hope which we have for the eventual future of the world, when the world will all come to recognize Kosh Baruch Hu. So this is an idea of that there'll be a recognition throughout the world of the honor of Hashem through Torah. And in fact, one of the reasons why the Rambam says Christianity and Islam are stepping stones in the way on the way to the redemption is because they both recognize to a certain extent, at least, Christianity more, Islam less, but the authenticity of Torah and its place is the foundation for their religions as well. So the idea is that the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which spreads throughout the world, is Torah. And that gives Kosh Baruch Hu honor even in the most distant islands, and that far away. That's according to the Rambam. Even Christian missionaries and Muslim warriors who spread the Torah are ultimately doing the will of God, because Jews don't have the resources to get to all these distant places, and the Christians and Muslims start the work. Now, neither the Rambam nor anyone else expected it would take hundreds of thousands of years after the work of spreading Torah started before there'd be a redemption. That's a separate issue. Why it didn't happen, why it doesn't happen quicker, why things are progressing so slowly in terms of the ultimate redemption. But that is the idea, that eventually even the most distant islands, the most remote places, will eventually come to the recognition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, that was Chav Hey. Let's go on to Chav Vav. Hishtach Hashem b'Hadras Kodesh. When he bowed down to Kosh Baruch Hu, he bowed down to Kosh Baruch Hu out of the majesty of holiness. So Mikan Omer from here they said, Al Yamod Adam B'Tfilah Ad Sheomar Halacha Achas Pasuk Echad. Pasuk Echad. So it's interesting idea that Hadras Kodesh uh, obviously means the splendor of holiness, and sounds like it requires a great deal of holiness in order to get to a situation what's called the splendor of holiness. But no, the Tanna of Eliyahu is saying that even a person who says one halacha or one pasuk, the kachne mara that of itself is a form of it's coming to Kosh Baruch Hu out of the splendor of holiness. Here it says in the bottom, so the bowing down to Kosh Baruch Hu references davening. And then it says, the previous passage it said, Havel Hashem Kavod. Right, give Kosh Baruch Hu honor, that's Torah. And then in this passage it says, Vishtachabu, to bow down, that's tefillah. So Torah precedes tefillah. And that is how you accomplish, he says, Hadras Kodesh. Idea limu kama tefillah. By learning for davening, nasa kli shebo megishim tefillah Hashem Yisbarach, the vessel with which we serve the davening up to Kodesh Baruch Hu, Dahainu Apeh, which is our mouth, mitzuchtzach, becomes shiny. Kubelis Baratzon, and it's accepted by Kodesh Baruch Hu his with a positive will. Now, so the idea, it's interesting because the person is actually also supposed to wash their face and wash out their mouth before they daven as well, if possible. So there is this idea of preparing for davening also in a physical way. But here the Tanna of Eliyahu is saying that in a spiritual way, if a person prepares himself for davening by learning some Torah, which is the covenant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so he's coming to daven with the honor of Hashem in his prefacing his tefillah. That's really why we say Ashrei before Mincha. And we say in Chakras and in Marv, we don't have to add any additional stuff because there's plenty of psukim mentioned in the Chakras and Mincha and Marv before we get to Shemon Esrei. But in Mincha, there are no psukim. We could just start off straight Shemon Esrei. That's why Chazal instituted Ashrei to before Shemon Esrei in order to come to davening out of Torah and out of learning even at least one pasuk here. Of course, there are many pasukim, but this idea of Yishtachvul Hashem Hadras Kodesh. The people don't really realize that the purpose of Ashrei, there are independent reasons to say Ashrei 3 times a day. When a bracha says to say Ashrei 3 times a day, somebody says Ashrei 3 times a day, he's Ben Olam Haba, because Ashrei itself is a powerful tefillah. But one of the reasons they also put it before Mincha is in order to fulfill this idea of coming to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'Hadras Kodesh, coming to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the splendor of holiness preceding our davening. Okay? You got that?
Is there any particular reason we use Ashrei over any of the other, what's it called, Tehillim?
Because it has this message, but it has 2 reasons. One is that it goes in olive base order, and we want to symbolically bring all of creation to bear to the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why we say from Aleph till Taf, from A to Z. And also because it has Poseches Yadecha Masbil Chol Chai Ratzon, has this idea HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a relationship with humanity, with the world in general, of humanity, and it gives the world what the world requires, and therefore we reciprocate by coming to daven to Kodesh Baruch Hu. So it expresses our cognition and our acknowledgement of Kodesh Baruch Hu, and therefore it's considered to be an appropriate way to come to daven. Okay.
Okay.
Chavsain, Kol Hashem al Amoim. The voice of Kodesh Baruch Hu is on the waters. So a Maim Torah. Again, this is the theme here in the Tanna of Eliyahu. It's clearly a pro-Torah theme. So water is Torah. Kach shenu chachamim. Chachamim say have this learned this way, and this is a parallel of a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, where it says like it's Torah to water, and it says that it says that you be careful with when you teach Torah because your kids like giving them water, and when you give them this water, if the water is bad, so then they'll have all sorts of negative ramifications. I don't know if he brings down the verse, the Pirkei Avos, but he doesn't seem to bring it down. No, he doesn't reference here. There's reference here. Yeah, Avos Perek Av Mishir Aleph. Right. Avos Perek Av Mishir Aleph. That's where it is. Um, so let's see that Mishnah. This reference sake. Uh, Avos here. Yeah, Avtayan Omer, Achami Zorbi Divrechem. Achami, be careful what you say. Shem Tukubu Galus. Maybe you're going to go into Galus because of, and it can mean a physical exile or it can mean a spiritual exile. The Sigul Mokamai Maroim, you're going to go into a place where there are bad waters, right? In other words, your Torah is going to get messed up and it's going to be like a poisoned well. You should tell me and the students will come after you will drink and they'll die. And the name of God will be desecrated as a result. So what we're learning here is actually alluding to that. Okay, so it says here, Kol Shema Maim Ein Maim Ela Torah. Water is Torah. Be careful what you say. Shema to Dover. You're going to teach something which is not from Torah. In other words, not appropriate. Then you're going to be liable to death in the hands of heaven. And the students who follow you, they're going to rule. They're going to teach something which is not from the Torah. They're going to be liable for death. The name of heaven will be desecrated. So it doesn't reference the water aspect directly here, only in Pirkei Avos, but it's the idea that you have to make sure to keep the water safe. And to keep the water safe is not just for you, which is an important point. But otherwise, if you don't keep the water safe, other people will drink from your water, and it's going to cause them to be distorted, and that, of course, will cause them to be chai misa shemayim. They're going to drink poison waters because you poison the waters, and then the name of heaven will be desecrated as a result. So you have this idea that uh, Torah is not just water which sustains you, which is good, but Torah is also water which you can poison and cause others to go and live bad lives and do bad things. So since Torah is the water, it's very subject to receive to absorbing other properties, and you have to be careful not to distort Torah as a result. And generally speaking, not just talking about Talmidei Chachamim, about people who are learning Torah as an academic pursuit, but anybody who lives the Torah life has a responsibility to be careful not to make Torah life look bad, distorted, cause Chil Hashem, and cause people to go off as a result. Okay?
The only what does that mean, like pollute? Like when they're saying that, they mean like giving bad information?
Giving bad information, but even passing the wrong halacha could be giving bad information, could be have this negative ramification. But I think it's more that if you learn Torah and it doesn't, and you're a bad person, in other
Hmm.
words, you yourself are not improved by the Torah, and the Torah doesn't have an influence on your life. And in fact, you use the Torah perhaps in negative ways by using it as a tool for your own self promotion or your own um, uh, uh, um, monetary gain by becoming like a popular teacher for the purpose not so much of spreading Torah, but for the purpose of um, enhancing your wealth, which is not so easy to do because there's not much wealth out there teaching Torah. But theoretically, so then that's a form of making the waters poison, because then people see Torah is just a tool which people use in order to get ahead. Okay.
Okay, that's a. I'm still trying to trying to figure out how do you use like Torah as a like basically to, make money, I guess. The only way I can actually even see about that happening is through midot, not necessarily through like
You mean?
spreading the Talmud and spreading, well, the other things also. Does
Yeah,
that?
listen, it's hard to think of Torah as being sort of the easiest way to become a wealthy person. It's much easier to think of Torah as making you a person of influence, who then uses their influence in a negative way.
Okay.
Okay, so that does happen. People become well known and people become well respected, and then they act in an inappropriate way. But certainly there is this idea. The person who learns Torah has to be extra careful in their midos, like you're saying. And if they're not extra careful in their midos, so that causes chilul Hashem. So, like Rabbi Yochanan said, anybody else, chilul Hashem is much less. It requires a much higher barrier to be considered being machal Shemai. But Rabbi Yochanan said, if I walk 4 amos without learning Torah or without wearing tefillin, without doing a mitzvah, and that's a chilul Hashem. So obviously, on our level, that's nothing. But on the level of Rabbi Yochanan, people have a higher expectation of him. And if he doesn't meet that higher expectation, which is for a great person the expectation, so then that's causing something which is people going to see that Torah doesn't have the qualities they thought that a great person should derive from the Torah, and that'll be a negative. So but here I should be honest. It says here explicitly that the Talmidim Abayachem Yarum Shimchem Davar Echad Min Torah, which sounds much more like it's not the Midos. It says you're gonna say over something, and they're going to repeat it, and then it's something which is not Torahic, and you, for whatever reason, said it over as if it's Torah, and then that's going to that in of itself makes makes them liable to death, and Shem Shemayim is going to be desecrated. So I guess there's a talk about Sonny Paskins and something wrong, much more directly than something about Midos. I think it's the same principle, but it's more directly here that somebody says this is the halacha, and it turns out that you were wrong about that halacha. Okay, so that
Okay.
means the person has to be very careful when they, as I'm asked the question, that they should give the right answer.
The
Okay,
other thing is I also find it a little difficult to be wrong about halacha if, I mean, because at some point you're going to be citing someone. It's just not the most popular opinion or the most, what's it called, accepted opinion, I guess.
that's not necessarily true because, like in my experience in Eruvin, dealing with rabbis who put up Eruvin, I found several rabbis who have no clue about Eruvin and Paskin halachas in Eruvin anyway. So I would say that there are people, and I probably I'm guilty occasionally of this myself, and not about such a major thing. But if somebody asks you a question, you answer off the cuff. You don't necessarily look something up, right? You don't necessarily figure, oh, I know this. I can answer this without looking up a book. So and you can sometimes make mistakes. It does happen, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so so if somebody asks you a question on a minor issue, it's not so bad. But somebody asks you a question on a major issue, like let's say on a citywide Eruv, so then that's a big question, big issue, big problem.
Is it, yeah. No. I was gonna ask if it's about retroactively fixing, but it usually doesn't happen. I'm just thinking about my own personal experience.
You mean, is it possible to fix it retroactively?
No, it is possible, but it's like not something that usually happens just because you get so busy otherwise, and then
Right.
just
Usually, you move on to something else. Yes.
you think about it, you feel guilty, maybe look it up and hope that you're right, and then move on.
Yep. That's usually what happens. Okay. So sadly enough, I agree. Okay. Kel hakavod hirim. So Kosh Baruch Hu, the God of honor, has caused thunder to break out. Hashem Amayim, Ram is thunder. Hashem Amayim Rabim, God is on many waters. So it sounds like there's a Kosh Baruch Hu is upset about something. What's he upset about? Asher shafati lechem divrei Torah. I spilled out to you words of Torah, kechol v'chashemen, like milk and like oil. Hamurak mikli el kli, which can be poured from vessel to vessel. The ain't kolo nishma, and you don't hear it. So, kach nemar kel avod hirim Hashem ma'im abim. Therefore, Hashem, it says Hashem caused thunder, became thunderous with many waters. So that's a very interesting marshal. He says here, uh, the it says Perusha Gam Shedivrei Torah Nim Shel Chol V'Shemen. Words of Torah are likened in very different aspects, and they're likened obviously to various different substances, and they're likened also to milk and to oil. I don't remember the reason why, but I think the milk because it doesn't have milk has no dirt in it. It comes out clean from the cow, and oil because it has a fragrance to it. And they can be poured from vessel to vessel below shishma kolam without any sound. Evidently, they're I think because they're thicker, so they kind of like the sound is muffled when you pour them from vessel to vessel. Okay, so in a divitor came. So he says the word of Torah not like that. Baruch Hu, we saw it gave him to the Jews. So Biram it was with thunder and great noise. In this word respect, the words of Torah are like water that has sound which can be heard very very powerfully, like a waterfall or such like. זה שמע ששפכתי לכם וכולי, כלומר שעוזר את דבר השם דבר זה, שהקדוש ברוך הוא מרעירים. Because Baruch Hu gave water initially, we'll come back, it's going to come to the second with thunder. But first he says, אבל כמה פרק ו', משהו שמדם התור לשמן גם בפרט, Zesh lo nishma kolo. It's going to say later on. It's going to say also that it seems that it's like oil in that it's not heard with great noise and fanfare. But so here says not sure how to reconcile the two. But I'm not sure what's bothering so much because it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes Torah has to be given with great thunder and fanfare. And that's the way it was given at the time of the Har Sinai. But then the Chazal themselves say that the first luchos, the first time the Torah was given, with the first tablets, it was given with great publicity and fanfare, and that didn't last. So, as the second tablet was given with much less publicity and fanfare with the second tablets, and that lasted. The second Luchos, the second set of tablets was not broken. So, the times when Torah has to be loud and flashy, and times in Torah should be quiet and silent and modest. And I don't think it's a contradiction, the fact that we have two different sources. One it says one, the other one says the other. It's situational. And even at Matan Torah, in the Midbar, even when Torah is given the Midbar, the reason I have to give it the first time with grand spectacle and great publicity is because it had to make an impression on Bnei Yisrael that this is authentic and it's coming from Shemaim. It's something which is divine and heavenly. It comes down miraculously and with a great fanfare. And once that was happened, so we know that there's a deficit in that. Things which are flashy and were done with great fanfare and great publicity, they don't run deep and they don't have a profound impression because they were just a spur of the moment excitement. So therefore, the second time the Torah was given with modesty and with humility and almost in secret. So that because things which are done in an intense way without that fanfare are much more lasting and much more penetrating. So the idea I think here is which the Tanna Eliyahu is saying is that yeah, sometimes even the Torah very often and perhaps is better when it's done without great fanfare and great publicity. It's like milk and oil, but sometimes it has to be done that way with great thunder and great fanfare. And it's always the appropriate. Okay, you have to figure out what the appropriate mode for the moment and for the audience is at the time. Okay, so about here, Hashem Mayim Rabim was like that. I was at the time of Matan Torah. Time when Torah was given, that was done with great. The first time was great thunder. Okay, so Kol Hashem Kol Hashem Badar. The voice of Kosh Baruch was in the power. Voice of Hashem is in glory. So they gave a parable to what is in this analogous. The Melchil Banim Gedolim, a king had adult children. Man Bali Torah and being some of them were experts in Tanakh. Man Bali Mishnah Gemara, some of them were experts in Mishnah and Gemara. Umayam Bali Matzah and some of them were experts in commerce. Nasa, that was all his adult children, I guess, from his first wife. Nasa Isha Cheres, Aniah. Then the king married a second wife who was poor. Philo Bunny and he had children from her. So she run the Mikra the Mishnah Gemara, and so he sent them to learn Tanakh, learn Mishnah Gemara, learn Modern Eretz, and learn the way of the world in terms of commerce. Hayeshim Mitzape. He was sitting and anticipating. Masayu Kabanim Magdali. When will they be like the adult children? When will they come to the same attainments and accomplishments as the adult children? Yomi Batzlam. So at some point he came to them, to the young children. There he has in the side here, the alternative version says Bo Etzel. Eventually they came to him. And it ain't be a dumb. Lo mikra mishlo derech. They hadn't accomplished anything. They didn't learn not Tanakh, not Mishnayos, not Gemaras, and not Derech Eretz, not commercial success. Vayoshev umetapeach lifneim. And he still sat and he was banging in front of them. Vormet says, banim shabanisi v'sadosha konisi ukramim shanatrati elu l'masisi kol elu. I guess he means that all the houses that I built and the fields that I purchased and the vineyards that I planted for the for these why did I do them? In other words, I invested so much in the children, the younger children, and they should be able to be successful and after they learn how to emulate the older children, and it was for naught. Right? So Kach Yisrael, so to the Jews who are descendants, I'm assuming this is the marshal, let's see a minute what he says about him, descendants of the Avos, right, of our forefathers, and of Moshe Rabbeinu, and of all the great generations at the beginning. This is what we're like when we don't learn. Kach Yisrael when they don't have words of Torah, right? They don't emulate the earlier generations. It's like Hashem says, "What I build this world for them, it's for nothing." So it says the voice of Hashem is in power, and the voice of Hashem is in glory, and He is upset. Okay, let's see. That's what He says on the bottom. Mashlu Mashal Lumad Dover Daima. Before Shabbat Kol Hashem Kol Hashem Adarsh as Devar Hashem, the words of Hashem. Mashmim idea koach. They're supposed to be heard by power, which he says is Amov in Torah, is the toil of learning Torah, V'hadar and glory, Shemhaja Torah mitzvahs derech, which we glorify the Torah with the mitzvahs and derech eretz, which we do. V'azem eviyah mashal, and this he brings a parable. He pounded in front of them. He clapped his hands. And indicates anguish. So he doesn't actually explain the marshal here to any great extent. But I think that's disappointing. Maybe I have to find a different book because this book seems to be not to be doing a great job. So but I think that's the idea. The idea is that Kodesh Baruch Hu says, I have this. I wanted you to learn from previous generations and be like them, and learn all the things that they did and emulate them, and you didn't do it. So if that's the case, any bracha which I intend to give you, there's no reason to give you anymore, because the whole bracha I intended to give you was because I expected you to follow in the pathway of the earlier generations and do what they did, and you didn't. You messed up. So that's he comes and he comes and says he remonstrates, right? He claps and makes loud noises and demonstrates how displeased he is with our activities in the world not being in line with the previous generations and how we're forsaking what we're supposed to do in this world. So it's interesting because Baruch Hu said, he married, so to speak, a second wife. The king married a second wife who's poor, and he said he's saying the fact that you're poor and your children are going to be children of a poor woman doesn't free them of this responsibility of emulating the older children. It's not an excuse, right? The fact that the second queen comes from more humble stock doesn't make a difference. They still have a responsibility. So to Bnei Yisrael, Even though, you can say, well, the later generation is not on the same levels. Earlier generations, because Baruch Hu says, so what? I gave you who to emulate. I gave you who to inspire you. You should have followed them and gone in their footsteps. Okay, so then it says, Kol Shem Shover Ozim, the sound of the Kosh Baruch Hu breaks the cedar trees. So this also sounds like a negative. Elu Me'on, these are people who shem pichimedivrei olam hazeh. They are smart in matters of this world, but masah matan and commerce, chol malachos, and all sorts of crafts. Ve'im b'hem divrei Torah, and they don't have divrei Torah. Einam shum elker, so only like it to a cedar tree. A cedar tree is very strong and powerful, but it produces no fruit. Ma'er is just like a cedar tree, einam motzi peros. It doesn't produce fruit. Kach misha ein bo divrei Torah. So to somebody that doesn't produce divrei Torah, nimshal keres. He's like a cedar tree. Shneimar v'anochi shmati esamri v'ibneihem. I destroyed the Amorites in front of the Jews. Asher kagov arazin gavo were tall like cedar trees. It's a continuation. Obviously, they're saying that even if you do achieve things in matters of this world, it's still not enough. So the marshal first one was nobody can accomplish anything. The marshal here is that even if you do achieve and you make yourself tall like cedar trees, Hashem is not impressed. I want fruit bearing trees. I want trees which bring benefit to the world. No, they're not just they stand and look tall. So therefore, he says that Kosh Baruch Hu breaks the cedar trees, the people who are just accomplished in that they have accomplished things in this world, if don't have appropriate connection to Torah and to self growth. And then he says, it says the pasuk goes on to say, Shabar Hashem is Arzei Lebanon. Because Baruch Hu broke the people of Arzei Lebanon, the cedars of Lebanon. Now, the first base of Mikdash was built from the cedars of Lebanon. That's who was taken. And here it says an amazing marshal. Every other these are people who were in the first base of Mikdash. Shumifukachin, right? They were smart. And they were in their place, meaning they live in there, so they were not in Golus. So they're smart, and they had and they were not in a state of this lack of equilibrium, discombobulation, because they're in Golus. So they didn't have divrei Torah. So that's worse. In other words, the Arzei, even though they built the Beis Hamikdash, Hashem says, I don't care about the Beis Hamikdash itself. I care about you. The Beis Hamikdash is the tool. So therefore, if you don't have divrei Torah, the Kach Ne'emar V'Shabar Hashem is Arzei Lebanon. Kosh Baruch Hu breaks the cedars of Lebanon. So therefore, Kosh Baruch Hu says, I'm not impressed. The fact you're building a Beis Hamikdash, you have much more responsibility for this, right? Than this, because you should have used the opportunity which I gave you in order to become great people, and you didn't use that. Okay, I think a lot of good stuff today. We'll stop here for today, and I'm going to wish you ksiva chasima tova. Thank you for coming to learn today.
Thank you, Rabbi. גמר לכם צימה טובה,
Okay,
שנה טובה, and
let's try and be more regular next year.
yes, I'm sorry,
Okay.
and yes.
Okay, take care.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.